Hey everybody, it's Romania Black. Yeah, I couldn't wait. You shouldn't be surprised. I said last episode, I was like, I don't know. I'm going to get through the comments for episodes 12 and 13, and then maybe I'll watch episode 15. Yeah, after that last episode where they give us this lance of Longinus and like teasing that stuff's about to go down and that maybe Fuyu and Gendo have been planning some things while this whole series has been taking place. Yeah, because of that, I was like, I need to go on. I have a lot of comments. I got a lot of comments for episodes 12 and 13. I have quite a bit to get through, so this intro is going to be a bit long, but that's okay, right? Right. So I'm going to start with the comments from episode 12 and kind of work my way into 13. And the rest of the comments from episode 12. Jimmy Russell talks about how Gendo may be knowing that he is giving Shinji praise and knowing that he's keeping him interested in Nerve and being the pilot of the EVA. He knows how Shinji works. He's his dad, after all, and that makes a lot of sense. That maybe the praise that he's giving Shinji, is it genuine or is he using Shinji? Is he giving him just enough to coax him and keep him trailing along? You know, we talk about that. Like, is he just giving him just enough to keep him, like, hanging on to Nerve? You know, I think Shinji at this point, it's not just the fact that Gendo has praised him, it's the fact that Rei and Asuka are involved and his friends and Misato are involved, that's what keeps Shinji going. I think Shinji having these relationships develop between Rei, Asuka, and Misato are what keep him in Nerve, but it definitely doesn't hurt that Gendo praises him. I definitely agree with that. John Smith asked the question of, is Shinji asking questions because he's truly introspective, or is it because he's reached this point where things are static and he just wants answers? And Smith brought up a really cool thing, that when you ask questions, you are expecting someone else to find the answer and give it to you. You don't ask questions if you already are expecting the answer. So in this sense, someone else has to give Shinji the answer. So it's kind of Shinji's way of taking the pressure of the decision, the pressure off of himself, and saying, okay, the ball's in your court. Now you give it back to me, right? And if it doesn't come back to me, then we can't change and we can't move forward. So I thought that was really interesting. It's a way for Shinji, if he's comfortable in a situation, for him to kind of keep static, right? Because if nobody's answering the questions, we can't change, right? So if he's in a good place, that could be why he's asking these questions now. It's interesting. Nitnall talked about how Antarctica, the imagery that we saw of the South Pole when Fuyu and Gendo visited in episode 12, reminded him of the Dead Sea. And I was like, well, in the last episode, we just got the Dead Sea Scrolls mentioned, so ta-da! But with that, Nitnall talked about how in the story of Lot with the city of Sodom, I was like, oh yeah, in the story of Lot, Lot and his wife, they were told and warned by the angels not to look back on the city, and then they did, and it turned to salt. And so I was like, that's interesting. And it could be connecting to Fuyu saying that the punishment doesn't fit the crime, kind of like with the story of Lot. So I thought that tie to that biblical story was really, really good. I'm glad you brought that up, Nitnall. And also, apparently, the creator, Anno Hideaki, is a vegetarian too, like Rei. So I'm like, okay, well, Rei's kind of embodying a little bit of the mangaka's own tendencies as a vegetarian. Makes sense. It's the author kind of inserting themselves into their character, right? Christopher Peterson, one of their comments here is that the creators, they distance themselves. I thought that it was interesting. Christopher was talking about how a lot of Western audiences, like US audiences, use a lot of Greek and Roman and even Egyptian mythology in their storytelling. But with Anno using Christian mythology, there's almost... Christopher was noting that it may be easier for the creator of Neon Genesis to do that because they have a distance to Christianity. When you have a distance to that religion or a mythology, it's easier to pick from it and kind of modify it because you're not that personally tied to it for religious reasons or other things. So that could be something to do with it. I thought that was pretty interesting. And that I do agree, though. I will argue that the 90s, when Neon Genesis was made, it may not just be Hideaki's connection to Christianity or distance from it, but the 90s and early 2000s were ripe with angel and demon stories. It was like Buffy the Vampire Slayer. Like, there was a big obsession with angels and demons at least in the Western culture around the 90s and early 2000s. There was a huge obsession with it. Like, lots of stories and movies and media were tackling the trends of angel and demons, and it kind of transitioned over into like werewolves and vampires in the early 2000s when we got like into Twilight and things like that. And then we had like a pirate era. So I think that's interesting that I think Neon was kind of riding that whole wave of storytelling that had a lot of Christian like undertones and symbolism in them. I think they were happening in Western culture at that time too. So it's interesting that all of this narrative storytelling was happening around the same time. Good to note. Cryptic Squid noted that of our characters, the idea that with this story, sometimes the characters, they don't necessarily quote unquote grow up, they just get bigger. So a lot of the problems these characters had when they were younger haven't really become rectified, they've just kept on. So issues that Akagi has had with her mother, like personal issues that Misato and Kaji have had, those things have all kept on going, they've not changed. And so even though these characters have gotten older, they may not have necessarily matured. And so I thought that was an interesting thing to bring up. And then also Cryptic Squid says, you know, is Gendo similar to Shinji? Because a lot of people throughout the story have made comments saying that Gendo is a little bit delicate and a little bit sensitive. You know, in the last couple episodes, everybody's like, don't get on Gendo's bad side or he may blow us all up. So I'm like, wow, that kind of connects a little bit to Shinji because Shinji's a little delicate and sensitive too. So, you know, like father, like son sort of thing. But I don't think Shinji would want to hear that. I don't think Shinji wants to be like his dad. He wants his praise, but I don't think he wants to be like his father. Now, the question is Shinji going to end up being like his father? That's the big question, but we're not there yet, right? I do think they're different, definitely. I think Gendo is not as adept to living as Shinji is. I think Shinji is much more empathetic and able to connect to people a lot better than Gendo, but I think they are similar, so that's interesting to note. EQ noted about color symbolism and the idea that with the color orange, which is pretty frequent throughout this series, and especially in episode 12, it also kind of ties to Rei and how she transitions from the orange Eva and her suit kind of having more orange elements to more blue and white, which is interesting because Shinji's whole outfit at the beginning is blue and white. It's not purple like his Eva. So it's almost as if Shinji's outfit and Shinji was meant for the 00 unit, but we see that doesn't work and stays with the 01 unit. So that's very interesting that Shinji's outfit is blue and white and tailored more kind of like Rei's and how her Eva unit is, but yet Shinji's unit is the purple one. Why doesn't Shinji have a purple suit? That's an interesting note. So I don't want any clues or hints or spoilers, but that's interesting to know. Also, Kaji shows up in episode 12 wearing an orange shirt. And for me, with color symbolism, orange often means caution or a warning. So orange flags for Kaji, that's all I'm going to say, right? Also, Sahaquiel, which was the 10th angel, could be a reference to Ultraman and the tokusatsu monsters from previous shows that could have inspired Neon Genesis. I thought that was cool. And even the tears of Matriel, which was the 9th angel, were orange, much like the 10th angel was orange. So maybe it's a reference to the caution with these angels, but also EQ is noting that, you know, maybe in some narratives the story is like the angel wanting to touch down on Earth, and are these angels trying to connect to humanity? That's a really good question. Like the tears, everything, are they trying to connect to humanity, but they're just balls of destruction so they can't connect? That's a really good question. Guess we'll find out, right? But Alex Cornejo commented that it seems like this show, we haven't accomplished much because we've had a very monster of the week mentality. Like everything has been like one villain after the other, and there's not really been time. Like the beginning of the series, we had a couple episodes where things slowed down and we got more introspective with our characters. And in the last several episodes, we've had that introspection, but it's been at the service of fighting these monsters like over and over and over again. So that could be part of it too. Also, Zodrex noted that in the simulation test back in episode 12 and 13, that the simulation bodies, they weren't the actual Evas. I'm like, thank you for pointing that out. They weren't actually the Evas, they were just simulation bodies. Still weird that they look like bodies and they're supposed to be representations of Evas, but it's good to know that those were actually not the Evas themselves. So that's good to know. The ones that were decapitated that they were experimenting in. All right. Bright Girl, Alex Cornejo, and Sticky Fingers also note that the number 3, we talked about it in episode 13, but it also applies to the number of Tokyos there are. There's Tokyo 1, 2, and 3, like that. And then Sticky Fingers pointed out that there are 3 power sources in Nerve. Good to note. And I thought that was pretty interesting. And also, I was like, oh, well, there's 3 Rebuild movies, and the 4th movie is called Thrice Upon a Time. Getting them number 3s. Lots of number 3s. You know, those being shown up, that's pretty good to note. So yeah, that was interesting. And then Stephen Husick notes that Akagi is kind of like, I likened her to Rei, but Akagi she seems kind of like Rei and Gendo in that Akagi doesn't quite know how to function like a normal person. And Stephen Husick kind of pointed this out, that Akagi constantly questions Misato, like why she does certain things, like why did she take Shinji in, like what was she talking about with Shinji. She questions like her lingering feelings towards Kaji. Whenever Kaji shows up, Akagi's kind of like, I'm not interested. Like Akagi she seems like she is not as equipped to know how to function as a woman. And maybe in episode 13, that could tie to why she hates women, because she's like, I don't know, women have this perceived notion of how they should act. Like they should be, the damsel in distress maybe, or they should be like sexually attuned or romantically invested in this man or whatever. And Akagi's like, I just don't get it. And so I thought that was really interesting that you pointed out that maybe she just doesn't relate to the woman part of her, so she falls back on the scientist part of her and kind of relates that when she's talking about the Magi and the computer system. She may not be as adept to living and maybe more similar to Rei and Gendo than we think. So I thought that was pretty cool. I liked that. I thought that was a really cool notion. And then finally, Daniel Contreras, episode 12, pointed out, they were like, hey, do you notice that thing at 1 minute and 50 seconds into the movie? Like the thing that was in the background? I'll be honest, I went back and watched the reaction to episode 12. No. Here's the thing. It shows the skyline. It shows they're inside that building whenever Misato's father's putting her in the pod. And you see the part of the roof break apart. I thought that when the roof broke apart, that light was just the light outside, that it was all glowing. But it's not. It's an outline of a monster. And I was like, oh, I thought it was just like bits and pieces of the roof. I didn't put together that it was the actual outline of a creature, right? It's either an angel or an Eva. It's one of the two. And I was like, okay, so are these, we saw the 2 pillars of light coming up when Misato was sent away. So are those 2 pillars the first and second angel? Are they Evas? What's going on? I don't know. I'm just like, I guess we'll find out. So yeah, I poured some coffee and was like, I don't want to wait. I want to watch episode 15, especially after reading that comment, Daniel. I was like, ooh, now my curiosity is piqued. And last episode was the craziest, most bizarre expo dump that has led us into being like, what's this Lance of Longinus? What's going on? What's Gendo and Fuyu been up to? Is this all about to come to a head after half a season? Okay. I'm really, really excited. And so that only took 13 minutes. As many comments as I had, I thought that was going to take a lot longer. So good deal. But holy cow, y'all. All right. I am ready to go. I've been excited for this episode. I can't wait. I hope y'all are excited too. But let's see what happens. I'm assuming, knowing how this show functions, it wouldn't surprise me at all if we left with that cliffhanger about the Lance of Longinus and we never speak of it again. We just never see it. We just see the aftermath of whatever Rei's mission was involved in. Wouldn't be surprised if that's the direction we go, because that's how this show functions. So we'll see though, right? So let's not waste any more time. We are going to dive into episode 15 of Neon Genesis Evangelion. And we're going to start that here in 3, 2, 1, and let's go. What the heck? Oh my god, yeah, that old plot's kicking in. It's kicking into overdrive. Okay. We got 10 episodes to go, y'all. And holy cow. Okay. Holy cow. Yeah. So what an episode. I was like, as soon as the credits were done and I stopped the recording, I was like, Whiteboard Coon, you're coming out here. We got things to do. Holy cow, there was so much that happened in this episode. This may be one of my favorites. I've said that the last several episodes because they've all been really good, but this episode, this is my jam. The whole espionage, the whole double agent. Kaji is a double agent. Knew it. I was like, yep, he's working for somebody else to try to get behind the scenes. We need to, but there was so much to break down, like so many conversations, and it's the weirdest cat and mouse because Akagi knows that he knows, but she's not saying anything, or as Kaji put it, Gendo is using him. Like, he knows he's being used. He knows that he's running a dangerous line here between how he's being needed and how he's using Gendo. So, oh man, there's a lot going on here. And then there's stuff with Ray we're going to talk about. I've got theories. I don't know how true they are, but I have theories about Ray. And then the whole connection of, again, this series has loved to put Shinji and Misato like on the same, like to deal with them in different ways. And my dog is like chewing a bone at the foot of Whiteboard Kun. So yeah, but I pulled up this OP, and it paused on, and so I stopped it. It paused on Adam, the little sample of Adam that Kaji brought to Gendo. What the hell? The Adam angel. So Adam is the first angel. I'm assuming Eve is the second. That would make the most sense, right? And then we just go from there, right? Is that right? Is that how we're doing this? But Adam, so this little specimen has become this monstrous creation. Now, Adam is frightening. That angel is frightening with the mask that I feel like Soul Eater was inspired by with the eyes. I feel like Soul Eater was inspired by it. Quite a bit. But yeah, because Adam, and also looking at the little sample of Adam, like it has like red dots around its mouth, like blood. What the fudge? Yeah, so we need to go through this episode. There's so much. Also, now I understand what the rainbow eyes are. It's there's 7 eyes of Adam. It's the 7 eyes. Okay, that's what it is. Okay, good to know. But yeah, we're gonna talk about, and so we see this angel, we see the angel or the Eva or whatever it was, we see what it was in the OP that was in episode 12. We see it with the hole through its heart. And then seeing the beast looking back. Yeah, we need to talk about this. We need to talk about this indeed. Okay. So, yeah, about that. Let's get to this OP and these runes. So the second and third Ashino Lakes. I like Fuyu. Fuyu's been so sassy lately. Fuyu-chan has been really sassy as of late, and I kind of love him for it, but he's like pulling no punches. He's like, oh, the second and third Ashino Lake. Hope there won't be any more of those. We also got more with the number 3. So I want to take a lot of notes here and go through this. Whiteboard Kun is probably going to suffer some abuse this episode. So the number 3, we are going to talk about the number 3 up here in the corner. So Ashino Lakes, we can add that to our list. There are 3 Ashino Lakes, so add that to the pile, right? As they're flying over it and saying, I received a complaint from Chairman Keel about the delay. You know what? There's also 3 of. There are also 3 people that Kaji's been assigned to do espionage on. There's the 3 people, the 3 of the council, which is Fuyu, Gendo, and this man named Keel. Now, I'm assuming Keel, and I'm going to put little dots here. I am assuming that Keel is the guy that Gendo was having the conversation with on the airplane way back in like episode 6 or 7, like way back in the back times that he was having that conversation with. So there's some kind of delay. A complaint, he came directly to me. So there's like a little runaround here where Keel is bypassing Gendo to talk straight to Fuyu-chan and saying like, why are we behind schedule? What's Gendo doing? Why doesn't he get his button gear? We need to get rid of him. He was pretty upset. He even hinted at dismissing you. And I love that they're having this conversation as these people are flying the plane behind him, and Gendo's like, no, Adam is proceeding well. And the Eva project has begun work on the dummy plugs. Okay, so I want to find a thing for Gendo here. Talk about Gendo up here. So Gendo, despite the delay, he says everything is connected. He says Adam is progressing, whatever the hell that refers to. We'll talk about Adam. Adam is progressing. The Eva project. We have the dummy plugs. I'm assuming, based on the last episode too, that that's talking about the idea of using the Evas without the pilots. They can perform with someone else, right? That seems a bit problematic. And I think that's what Maya was expressing concerns about, right? She was like, this seems unsafe. And like it could go out of control. What do the old men of SEAL have to complain about? So it's like, why are the committee complaining? And Fuyu says the all-important human instrumentality project is behind schedule. Fuyu just throwing some sass. He's just like, oh, your all-important project is delayed. That's why they're upset, right? And Gendo says all the projects are linked. There's no problems. He's like, who cares if it's a little behind schedule? They're all linked up together. Everything's fine. Like Gendo, and he says, including Ray. Is Ray fine? Uh-huh. And then Fuyu's like, I've overstepped my, like the moment that Gendo has silence about Ray, Fuyu's like, I've overstepped my boundaries. So this whole thing about Fuyu saying that Gendo is too concerned about Ray, there's a reason for that, and we're going to get to it. We're going to talk about it. I've got theories about it. I don't want my theories proven or disproven, so don't be spoiling me, but I have theories, okay? By the way, what should we do about that man? Yeah, that man that is Kaji, obviously, right? What should we do about that man? We'll leave him to his own devices, the same with the Marduk Institute. So, we'll talk about Kaji right here. We're going to bring up old Kaji. So, Kaji, Akagi, Fuyu, Gendo, and now Misato. They all know he's a spy. But here's the thing. Gendo and Fuyu don't seem threatened by Kaji. I mean, Kaji did bring them Adam to begin with, so they're like, we're not threatened by him. The same with the Marduk Institute. I suppose we'll let him work to our purposes for a while longer. So Gendo's whole thing is that we are going to keep Kaji alive for now. That does not bode well. Does not bode well indeed. And I'm thinking we're about to find out about Kaji, what the deal is. Okay, so yeah. And then, so Kyoto. This is where Kaji was. He was in Kyoto because Akagi asked him, like, what were you doing in Kyoto there? So he was on his business trip, right? God, everything is coming together in this episode. It feels like we spent 12 to 13 episodes like slowly building up the characters, slowly building up this world, building up the plot, giving us crumbs. And now with episode 14 and 15, it's like things are starting to click and come together and thread. It's like, oh, buddy. But yeah, so Kyoto, what started here 16 years ago. So there's a timeline. Okay, we're going to establish a timeline right over here. So we got a timeline that we want to go with, okay? So party like it's 1999, right? So 1999, which is 16 years ago. That's the year before the second impact. What started here 16 years ago? Okay, so we have 1999. We have 2000 was the second impact. All right. We have 2004, which was Yui Ikari, which was Shinji's mom. She died, supposedly, 4 years after the second impact. Okay. And Shinji would have been, he's 14 now. So that would have been 2015. He would have been 4. So he was 3 years old. Okay. So when Shinji was 3. Shinji was 3. I'm going to guess that imagery of Gendo when Shinji has like the bag beside him and he looks like a toddler crying, I'm gonna guess that that's when his mom died, and Gendo like abandoned him because he was like, peace out, don't know how to father, and just like peaced out and left Shinji alone. I'm gonna guess that's what happened. But then supposedly 8 years ago, which would have been 2007. So 2007, there was this whole thing with Kaji and Misato, which was from 8 years ago. Okay. And then 3 years ago, which would have been 2012, was the last time Shinji visited Yui's grave, and he ran away from his dad because he didn't know how to act. He didn't know what to do. That had been 8 years since then. And then 2015 is the present time. Okay. Okay. So we've got a timeline started here, right? Got 1999 leading up through here. Okay. And so then what started in Kyoto? So something happened, right? Something was going on in Kyoto. We just don't know what. And I love this imagery of the phone, the hand phone, but the wire's been cut, right? And it's on something number 6 is what it's set on. It's just a creepy imagery of it just sitting there on a table. And then there's Kaji waiting on something. Okay, and he pulls the gun thinking somebody's going to attack him. Okay, and the door opens. Lies and Silence. I love the title of this episode. Obviously, the second title is really good, and we'll talk about it because I think it relates to Shinji and Misato, especially Misato. But Lies and Silence is perfect. I love it. Mm-hmm. Like, who's keeping quiet? Who's telling lies? Mm-hmm. So it's the woman from... It's either the woman... It's a different woman from than the cable car, but it's someone else passing information off. Just opening the door enough, right? And it's just this lady feeding the cats with her groceries. Shannon Bio, a chemical firm funded from overseas. Okay, so we get these titles thrown out, right? We get these titles thrown out. So we have Shannon Bio. All right. We have Shannon Bio, which is a overseas chemical firm. Okay. So we have them. And she says, it's been here for 9 years, but it hasn't changed in 9 years. Okay. So 9 years ago, so that would be, if we go back, that's 2006. So in 2006, we have Shannon Bio has been there. Okay. So that would have been right before Kaji and Misato had whatever tryst they had. Okay. Hasn't changed in 9 years. The Marduk Institute has 108 affiliated companies. So then there's this whole thing about the Marduk Institute, which Gendo and Fuyu brought up. The Marduk Institute has 108 affiliations. Okay. Has 108 companies they're affiliated with. 106 are dummy corporations. Ah, okay. So 106 are fake. So it's just different ways for them to transport funds and everything and make it seem like they're transporting goods between two companies, but it's all fake. It's just spreading money around. And this is the 107th. This is the corporate registration. Okay, so Shannon Bio is the 107th. Okay, so you want to take a look at the board of directors, right? So you already knew about it. Oh, so the company's board of directors are Keel, Kozu Fuyutsuki, and Gendo Ikari. Ah, okay. So the directors, okay, are the three of them, Keel, Gendo, and Fuyu. So that's probably when that's probably Keel's, again, probably the guy on the plane that Gendo was meeting up with, and he's right with the firm that's The names are all familiar. The Marduk Institute is supposed to be an advisory body. Okay, controlled by the Human Instrumentality Committee to select EVA pilots. Wow! So this institute, so it works with the Human Instrumentality Project to select EVA pilots. Funny that. Wow, funny that. And so I'm guessing this Shannon Bio, this overseas firm, is probably connected to where Asuka's from, right? Probably connected with Asuka. I'm just going to take a gander. Could be. What it does is not clear. Yeah, can't imagine. Your duty is to investigate Nerve. So whoever this lady is with knows of Kaji. So Kaji's duty was to investigate Nerve. Okay. He was sent in to figure out what the hell's going on there. Okay. She says getting involved in the Marduk Institute is a bad idea. So he's trying to overstep and get involved in something else. He's like, yeah, while I've been here at Nerve, I found out about this whole Marduk Institute and that Gendo and Fuyu are dipping their hands in something else beyond just Nerve. It's now going out into other institutions and it's spreading. It's bigger than what we thought. And this lady's like, look, you're getting in too deep. And he says, I'm the type that has to see everything for myself. Yeah, but here's the thing. Kaji knows he's in deep. He knows, and he's like, I can't turn back now. It's too late. Okay. This is Kaji. I'm out right now. And then we get to the voicemail. Okay. I love that Asuka's just like, help me, Kaji. And then, yeah, of course she does. Of course she does. I love she just clicks it off. It's great. Not. And so then we have Hikari, who's the class rep, and she's like, well, I called Mr. Kaji thinking he'd take me out somewhere, but he's not in. And that he has been out a lot lately. He's out lately no matter what I call and when I call. So, Asuka, talk about Asuka here. I'm going to put her over here. So Asuka, she definitely is seeking attention. Is seeking attention and human connection. We'll talk about that with the title of the episode here in a little bit. But yeah, Asuka clearly is seeking human attention and affection. She just wants somebody to care, right? She's insecure and she knows Kaji and she's comfortable around Kaji and she just wants him to hang out with her and he's not around. And so she's like, I don't know what to do. And so she's just seeking attention, right? And affection. And Kaji, as we've talked about in previous episodes, Kaji coddles her. He spoils her and coddles her. And so she's used to that and she finds comfort in it. So he is kind of like a big brother father figure to her, right? And so him not being there, the class rep's like, oh, that means you're free tomorrow, right? And she's like, regrettably, yes. And she's like, well, let me ask you a favor. And that's when she asks her, she's like, my friends, she's like, could you please go out with this guy that she's like, a friend of my big sister, Kodama, is insisting I introduce you to him. And Asuka's like, ugh, okay, sure. And agrees to go. But then we cut to Rei, who is wringing out the wash rag in the most suspicious, creepy fashion, right? Never has a wash rag been squeezed so creepily. And Shinji's like, huh. And Shinji thinks back and seems to have this memory and this flashback, right? Because he would have been 3 years old when his mom died, okay? So he would have been 3. So he would have some memory of her, but not a very good one, because usually when you're that young, you don't remember stuff. Right? But something about what Rei does reminds him of her. And then Toji, of course, interrupts. And then everybody else kind of interrupts with everything. And we skip that moment. We'll come back to it. We skip the whole moment to do the necrosis operation, which is the whole thing with the plugs. And the dummy plugs. The graph measurement complete. Yep. And so then they're like, sync rate's normal. I love that throughout this series, whenever like they're in the middle of missions or in the middle of operations, they're still having like a casual conversation. They're like, so what are you going to wear tomorrow? It just feels very natural. The dialogue in this show feels like a conversation you would hear someone actually having, which is really good. And so Akagi's asking, what are you going to wear tomorrow? And she's like, oh, to the wedding? Oh, well, you know. And so they established that there's been a lot of weddings lately. Like, there's at least 2 or 3. And Akagi, she's like, oh, you're not going to wear the orange one? We talked about the color orange, but it doesn't fit her, so no. She's like, it's too tight. And she's like, yeah, so what? And she's like, should I get a new one on the way home? It's an extra expense. And we've talked about how Misato kind of like doesn't have a lot of money. So she's like, do I get a new one? I don't know. And then Akagi's like, the cost of all the gifts is starting to add up from the wedding. She's like, everyone's in a rush to get married before they're 30. No one wants to be the last one still single. That's enough, you 3. Okay. And so then, yeah, Shinji is just, of course, Asuka's complaining, but Shinji keeps looking over at Rei, being like, what the heck is going on? And so Akagi makes the comment that Shinji looks more downcast than usual. And yeah, he has seemed a little bit more out of sorts because he's worried about Rei or has something on his mind. And then Misato says it's because of tomorrow. And Akagi's like, oh, yeah, tomorrow. And so at first, you're like, oh, he has to go see his dad. That would be, going to see Gendo is enough of a traumatic element, but then you find out it's the anniversary of his mother's death. Adds a lot to it, right? And so Shinji opens up to Rei about seeing his dad. And it's curious that Asuka's not there. Asuka's off somewhere else. But Shinji is like, I don't know what to say. What should I talk to him about? And he asks Rei this. So here's the thing. Okay, I'm going to run out of room with Whiteboard Kun. It's just going to happen. But so we have this whole thing with Shinji and with Rei. He knows from the previous episodes that Rei has been able to talk to Gendo before, and she seemed fine about it, right? So Shinji has to see his dad on his mom's anniversary of her death. And so he asks Rei, what should I say to him? He's like, what should I talk about? I don't know. You guys have talked. What did you guys talk about? You guys had a conversation. Seemed to go somewhere. And yeah, Rei's like, why would you ask me? He's like, I saw you talking happily with him. And we get those brief flashes of her and him smiling at each other. And she's like, I don't know. He's like, what kind of person is my father? And she's like, I don't know. And that's so sad. It's so sad that Shinji has no clue what his father's like. He's like, I don't know. Every time I've tried to talk to him, it's been super awkward and uncomfortable, so I just gave up and stopped trying. And he's like, I don't know how he is. Do you know Rei? And Rei claims that she doesn't. And he's like, oh, okay. And so Rei points out, she's like, you've been looking at me all afternoon. Is that all you wanted to ask is just about your dad? Like, why have you been staring? And he brings up the washcloth. He's like, you were clean today, you're wringing out the cloth. And he says, it looks like something that the way you did it was like a mother. And she's like, a mother? And he's like, yeah. And we see like the thing, I thought it was like a mother. And she's blushing, right? And she smiles at that. He's like, maybe you'd be really good at being a housewife, Ayanami. And he's like trying to make conversation with Rei. He's like, hey, he's like, you'd probably be a good wife to somebody. Ha, right? Right? And she's like, what are you saying? And that's it. Like, Shinji tries to have a conversation with her, tries to make small talk, and Rei just doesn't know what to do. But he says that Rei is like a housewife. And then in the last episode, we had the comment from Asuka about how do you feel in your mom's breast or in her womb. So my theory is, and I don't want to be disproven, I don't want somebody to be like, no, you're wrong, here's what it is. Don't say that. As I launch this marker across the room. Don't say that. Don't tell me, don't spoil me. But my theory is Rei, is she like a clone of Shinji's mom? Is Rei a clone of Yui? Is she? Because I'm thinking she might be. I'm thinking she might be a clone. I'm thinking she might be a clone of Yui. Because Gendo gets along with her. Gendo seems somewhat protective of her, and Fuyu-chan notices. Shinji is connecting memories of his own mother to Rei. He feels comfortable around Rei. He feels concerned for Rei. He feels like she has a good relationship with his dad and asks him things. I've never felt like any kind of like romantic or sexual tension between Shinji and Rei. And there's just something about her. And when we get to that whole thing with the chamber, the tube at the end with Gendo, we'll talk about that. That's my big thing in the conversation at the graveyard. But yeah, and Shinji doesn't know what his mom looks like. He has no photographs of her. I'm like, is she a clone of his mom? Is she a clone of the mom? I'm thinking she might be. So my theory is that she might be a clone of Shinji's mom. Okay. And that's why Shinji feels this connection towards her. I could be wrong. I probably am. But yeah. So again, we're watching this TV show. Asuka's sitting there eating the chips with Pin. We get the conversation on the TV. What do you mean you're the one that wanted to break up? And then I was wrong. I wasn't thinking back then. And so we have her like watching and then of course Misato went shopping. She got the outfit, right? And so she says, aren't you going on a date tomorrow? You better go to bed. Uh-huh. And Asuka's like, yeah, with a hunk. Like just to show off to Misato, just be like, yeah, I'm going on a date with a hunk. What are you saying at this late date? Mm-hmm. I don't know about you, but I'm a different person now. And so as this conversation about our relationship is going on the TV screen, Asuka asks Misato if she can borrow her lavender perfume. And Misato's like, no, absolutely not. And she's like, geez, cheapskate. And then meanwhile, the people on the TV are saying, I still love you. Time and people are two things that can't be turned back to the way that they were. Okay, that is something that is, again, this TV screen has like stuff, like messages embedded in it. So there's this conversation saying time and people cannot be turned back to the way that they were, cannot be restored to how they were. That's another thing. That's leading me to believe that Rei may be a clone of Shinji's mom, because that whole conversation that time and people are things that can't be turned back to the way that things were. I'm like, is Gendo like, did he try to bring his wife back through Rei? And that's his way of like holding on to her, is like, oh, I can bring my wife back through Rei. See, here we go. But the only thing that doesn't add up with that is that she died in 2004. So that was 11 years ago. So that doesn't quite fit the timeline. I'm like, if Rei was a clone of her after she died, then Rei would only be 11 years old. That doesn't seem quite right. So that doesn't seem to fit like it should, but I don't know. Again, there's parts of the puzzle missing, but she's connected to Shinji's mom somehow. She has to be. She has to be connected to the mom somehow. We just don't know how yet, right? But yeah, I love that idea that time people, they can't be restored to how they were. So like Misato and Kaji, they're not the same people that they used to be, whether they think they are or not. Like, I like that idea. Okay. And so then Asuka says, cheapskate, you won't let me use your perfume. And Misato says, it's not for kids. So that ties to why Asuka's even more pissed off later, because she is being viewed as a child and not mature enough for love. She's not mature enough to handle like a relationship like that. Like, that's the inference that Asuka's getting. So it makes sense why she gets mad at Misato later on when she smells the perfume on Kaji, because she believes they've been close and she doesn't know that Kaji's been carrying her on his back the whole way. And then it's why she has the impetus to try to kiss Shinji. She's like, well, screw you, I can have a relationship, I can kiss a guy. And then she immediately regrets it, which is cute. I like that she like gargled her mouth, like she gargled mouthwash after kissing Shinji. That was really cute. But yeah, and then she asks if Shinji's in the room. I can never go back to the way I was, but I really do still love you. I'm telling you, it's impossible. It took me 3 years to forget you. It's too late. Okay, so we had that conversation. It's not that he doesn't want, and so I like that she's like, because Asuka brings up, she's like, yeah, he doesn't want to talk to his father, and Misato's like, no, it's not that he doesn't want to, it's that he doesn't know what to say. He doesn't know what to do. He's afraid because he's afraid that he's going to say the wrong thing or that he's not going to be able to connect to his dad. She's like, it's not that he doesn't want to talk to his dad. He really does. He just isn't sure what to say. And so I like that. I like that while this conversation is going on, it's hinting at the future things that we're going to see with Kaji and Misato. It's hinting at the conversation between Gendo and Shinji. It's hinting at a lot of things, right? Interesting. She's like, that's the problem. And so we go into Shinji's room with his shirt hanging up, where he's sitting there staring at the light. And then we get Gendo saying these two things, the two things that stick out that he said to Shinji. One was leave. That's the first thing that he recalls, is him looking down at him. And then the other thing that he says, and he sees the elevator, he says, well done, Shinji. So Shinji is left with these two versions of his father, and he's not sure how to handle either of them. There's the version of his dad that tells him to leave, and then there's the version that tells him good job. So as a son, he's like, I want to appease the one that said good job, but he's like, I don't want to deal with the one that told me to leave. So he's like, how do I get the good dad instead of the bad dad? That's what he's concerned about, right? And so Shinji's like, I don't know what to do and how to get on my dad's good side. And I like this conversation he has with Misato, where because she was estranged with her father. So she understands from Shinji's perspective. She's like, I know what you're going through. I know what it feels like to not know what to say to your dad and to be at odds with him. She's like, I get it. And she tries to help him. And I like that she realizes he's faking it. She's like, are you scared of seeing your father by yourself? And Shinji, she's like, you can't keep running away. Unless you take that step forward, nothing will change. So I like that. I like that Misato, if I can find this here. I like that Misato says that you can't run. You have to move forward. She's like, if you keep running, nothing's going to change with you and your dad. She's like, I know from experience. She's like, until you take that step forward, nothing is going to change. And I like that Shinji's like, I know. I love this conversation. It's like such a big brother, it's like a big sister, little brother scenario where he's like, I understand. He's like, I know that, but I don't know what to do. And then Misato says, you'll begin to realize that after that first step, it's just as important to keep going. That you have to keep progressing. She's like, it's not enough to take that first step. She's like, you've already taken the first step, but it's not enough. She's like, you've got to keep going. You can't just stop now. I love that. Anyway, go see him tomorrow with your chin held high because you'll be seeing your mother too. I love that. I love that she's like, look, your mom's going to be there too. You're not alone. She's like, look, you got to stand up strong, be strong for not only yourself, but for your mom too. I'm like, I love that conversation that she has with him. It's really good. And then the lights go out and Shinji's like, ugh. And so I brought you a new dress for tomorrow, didn't you? Let me see. It was expensive, you know. And so then, taste is more important than price. Truer words have never been spoken, girl. Taste is much more important than price. Absolutely. Mm-hmm. So and then Shinji's like trying to drown out their girl talk. Like, I don't have time for this. Nope. Did you pick based on Mr. Kaji's taste and stuff after all? Oh, that's good. I think not anymore. So Misato basically saying I'm my own person. Kaji does not influence me anymore. So Misato basically admitting that Kaji did influence her in the past. But not now. Nope. Not influenced now. Nope. So next day. And then of course, I like that she's like, well, see you. And he's like, later. To Pin. Poor Pin's like, what? You guys are leaving me? So we go to this wedding and there was something said. I love the frilly undershirt that the man at the wedding has, and that wedding dress is so 1990s. Like, it's got the big labyrinth style fluffy sleeves and the gloves. It's great. Okay, they say, please place 3 bags in your heart was the song that they're singing. So, again, 3rd time's a charm. They said 3 bags in your heart. Okay. Telling you, that number 3, it's coming out all the time. And then we have the girls singing karaoke, red, blue, and yellow. The 3 colors they're talking about in the song. You know, and let's proceed with the reception. So yeah, then we got the 3 colors in the song. All number 3, all there we go. And so then we have Ryoji Kaji. I love Akagi's dress. That green looks fabulous on her. That's like my favorite shade of green, that emerald color, like the color of our old our survey core code here. That's my favorite green. So I love that she has that. She's like Rio's late, Ryoji Kaji. And I love Misato's like, she says that idiot has never been on time in his entire life. And Akagi's like, well, he shows up to work on time. It's like, you mean for dates that he's never on time? It's not, so like for pleasure he's not on time, but for business he is. And then of course he shows up and says, hey, you two, you look even more beautiful today. What a smooth talker. I couldn't get off work in time. It's like he threw on the tux and the tie, didn't shave his head, kept his hair in a ponytail, threw on the tux, and got over there as fast as he could. Yeah. It's like as if you're not puttering around the office all the time. And he's like, she's like, not that I care, but you could have done something about that stubble. She does care. She's like, you could have shaved. Really? And she fixes his tie. Your necktie's crooked. And he's like, oh, well, thank you. Yeah. And then, of course, Akagi's like, you two act like you're married. And I love that he leans over and he's like, that sounds good to me, Ritsuko. And Misato's like, spare me. Like hell, I'd take him. And then that hard cut from that happy, fun wedding to a massive graveyard is just the most insane. It's just boom, cut. And all of these graves, they're just spires. And he even says there's not a corpse there. So I'm guessing, are they cremated? Were they cremated? I don't know. But it's just a memorial, right? It's not the real grave. God. So, and then we have Shinji standing in front of it with the flowers. 1977 to 2004, Ikari Yui. So 77, 87, 97... 23, she was 27 when she died. Meaning she was 24 when she had Shinji. So she was 27 when she died. Okay. Yeah, and that's him looking there. And he says, and then of course Gendo is like, Gendo again is symbolically this overshadowing presence behind Shinji. Shinji looking at the grave with the sad, somber eyes we've seen him with this entire series, because of seeing his mother's grave with the flowers, and Gendo is just like behind him as this ominous presence, right? Saying it's been 3 years since the last time we came here together. And Shinji says, I ran away then and haven't been back since. It just hasn't sunk in that mother is resting here. So, and that was, 3 years ago. So I wonder why it hadn't sunk in. It had been, 3 years ago, 2012, it had been 8 years since she died, and it still hadn't sunk in. Unless this memorial was just put up there for the first time 3 years ago. It didn't exist prior, and so him seeing that, it triggered him, and he just couldn't do it, and he ran away. That makes sense. That makes a lot more sense now, tying back to the very first time they talked to each other. They hadn't seen each other since he ran away from his mother's grave. That makes more sense now, why it was so tense between them. That makes a lot more sense. Okay. And he's like, I don't even remember her face. And then Gendo says, man survives by forgetting his memories. So it's like all the trauma He's like, man survives by forgetting things that are traumatic. So Shinji, when he says he's forgotten his mother's face, Gendo says that that's just part of survival, is forgetting. Forgetting is just a way to keep alive, right? And I guess he's trying to make Shinji feel better. He says, but there are some things a man should never forget. So I'm like, are you talking down to your son? He says that it's to forget is to survive, but some things should not be forgotten. Which is ominous in itself, because then, okay, if Rei is tied to his mom, Gendo's like, I'm not forgetting Rei. I'm not forgetting my wife, Yui, because she lives on in Rei. So maybe that's why he's not forgetting. But it's almost kind of like a backhanded move to say that to Shinji, where Shinji's just like, I forgot my mom. You know, she died when I was 3 years old. So why would I remember her? And Gendo's comment almost reads almost like a backhanded thing, where he's like, well, some men should never forget some things. And Shinji's like, I was 3. Thanks, Dad. Can't help that I forgot her. He says, Yui taught me about the irreplaceable things. So he says, Yui taught me about irreplaceable things. So, in a surprise twist, Gendo seems to really have loved his wife. Like, he seems to really have loved her. So the question is, how did she die? She died pretty young. She was only 27. I had thought this whole time she had died during the second impact, but it was 4 years later. So what happened 4 years later? What do we not know about? What's the deal? How does Rei fit into all this? He seems like he clearly loved his wife, so what's the deal? I'm like, I come here to confirm that. But I'm like, she taught you about the irreplaceable things like your son that you have nothing to do with? I was like, is your son not irreplaceable? You gonna clone him too? It seems, it's such a creepy thing, because on the surface that seems like such a kind gesture, and like, yeah, that's really sweet that he thinks of that with his wife, but then he's so distant from his own child with her that it's like, what the heck, Gendo? Explain. And so Shinji saying, you have no pictures of her, and he says there are none left. This grave is just a decoration too. There's no corpse. He says, so the teacher was right. You threw them all away. Oh, so what happened? So the teacher said he threw away all the pictures of his wife. Why does the teacher know that? What's the deal there? I don't want to know. I want to find out as we go, but that's interesting. Okay. Maybe it's something that everybody did. They just threw away pictures. I keep everything in my heart. That is enough for now. So that shot of Gendo, where he says he has no pictures of her, but he keeps her in his heart, and that's enough. Because that's the difference. Shinji almost seems like he's blaming him. He's like, do you not have any pictures? And Gendo avoids answering why not. He just says there are none left, and Shinji's like, oh, you threw them all away. Like, that's kind of like a cold, like saying like you don't have any because you got rid of them. Like, it's not by choice. Shinji's saying it's by choice you don't have pictures of her, and he says, no, I keep everything in my heart. That's enough for now. For now. But we do see beyond his glasses, and that he does seem serious, and you can see like the crow's feet under his eyes. And Shinji, that look for him, Shinji just doesn't seem impressed. He's like, that's not good enough. Like, you should have a picture of her. Like, that's good for you because you knew her all these years. You can keep her in her heart. But Shinji's like, I only knew her for 3 years. It's not enough to imprint on me. He's like, I need something else. And you threw away any chance of me getting that. So he's like, good for you. She's in your heart. But I don't have a memory of my mom. So that look is just very disappointing. And so then he says, it's time. I'm leaving now. Just leave Shinji by himself in the graveyard. And this is where Shinji comes to like have the one-on-one with his dad. And God, Gendo, as he's turning away from them. And Shinji sees Rei. Like, Rei's in the ship. Why is Rei with him? Why aren't you taking Shinji with you? And he says, Father, I'm glad I got to talk to you today. He got the courage to say something nice to his dad, to like try to appeal to him in that moment. And then all Gendo says is, I see. That's it. That's all he says to his kid. His kid worked up the nerve to be like, Dad, I'm glad I got to talk to you. Didn't say, yeah, me too. Didn't say, it's been good to talk to you too. Or see ya, Shinji. Just, I see. The fudge, Gendo. Father of the Year. I'm like, why'd you leave your son abandoned at a graveyard? Again. And then he walks off, away. I'm like, I'm assuming he had another way of getting there, but I'm like, you couldn't give your son a lift home? Couldn't give him a lift back to Nerve in this nice chopper? You just let him go home a different way? What? So frustrating. So frustrating. And then that's when we have the alternate title. Those women longed for the touch of others' lips and thus invited their kisses. So, those women. So that's a good note too. So the question is, we know from this episode, it's clear that the second title is talking about Misato and Asuka. Very much. That Misato, she just wanted to feel someone else there. So that could tie to why she had that relationship with Kaji before, because she just wanted someone's affection, right? And so she invited in Kaji. It explains why she keeps letting him come back for more. She doesn't turn him away because she just longs for the feeling of something. She wants something. She wants that romance. She wants that feeling, that physicality. And so she lets Kaji like invade her space over and over again, even though she's tried to get to the point where she resists him. And then you have Asuka, who is starved for attention and is very vocal about being starved for attention. Like, we, the audience, can tell it really heavily, but nobody else seems to get it. So she just wants affection from someone. So she tries to get it from Shinji and invites the kiss in from Shinji. And then she's like, oh, that was a bad idea, right? And Misato seems to think that was a bad idea too, but it's a little different because of the history that her and Kaji have. My question is it just Misato and Asuka that this is relating to? Or did Gendo's wife, was it similar for her, for Yui? We don't know yet, right? It's all so interesting. So yeah, and so Shinji plays the cello. What? I'm so amazed. Shinji plays the cello. That's such an interesting little note that he plays cello. Interesting. And the reason that he gives with it when Asuka comes home and sees, I'm like, Shinji can provide his own somber, depressing music. Shinji provides his own soundtrack. You know, good deal. Good deal. And so as he plays this, right? And I like that he seems almost at peace, right? So we're going to flip this over because need to. All right. So we need to talk about Shinji. So Shinji, we're going to put just different people in different categories here. So Shinji is at peace with his cello music. All right. He does. He seems like he's at peace when he plays it. And so then he just seems kind of like content. And then Asuka shows up from her date. And she's like, has the outfit on, the green outfit. She's like, not bad. I didn't know you played. And he says, I've been studying since I was 5, and this is all I can do. So at 5, so 2 years after his mom died, at 5 years old, so for 10 years, he's been playing the same tune. So it's like, this is all I can do. So I don't have any real talent. And so Asuka says, though, perseverance is power. Like, what are you talking about? So we got Shinji over here. Asuka talks about how perseverance is power. She's like, just because you've been playing the same song over and over again, you've been doing it, so you kept it up. It's not bad. And she's like, I started studying because my teacher told me to, so I could have quit at any time. She's like, then why keep going? And he's like, because nobody told me to stop. So that very much, again, ties to Ray, right? So he says that he was told to do something, but not to stop. And that, I'm going to put Ray over here. So that personality trait is similar between Shinji and Ray. That personality trait is similar. And then Ray has been compared to be motherly the last several episodes. It's just, yeah, that whole thing about no one told Shinji to stop. I'm like, that kind of is very much like Ray. If you tell Ray to do something and you don't tell her to stop, she keeps doing it. So is it any wonder then that they are very compatible? So yeah, there's the whole thing about the instrumentality where Ray and Shinji are seemingly compatible psychologically, right? That would make sense if there's like some kind of essence of Shinji's mom in Ray. It would make sense. It would make sense why, and if a part of Yui, or if she's a clone of Yui, is in Ray, it would make sense why Ray is attracted to Gendo, because that's Yui's husband. It would make sense why but that's curious, because she doesn't like Shinji at first. So that's interesting, right? It's just there's so many similarities there. But I feel so sad for Shinji, because he's smiling as he says, well, no one told me to stop, so I just kept playing. Like, it's kind of sad. It's really sad, but he's like happy about it. And Asuka's like, ugh, should have known. Like, you're so weird. And so then Shinji's like, I thought your date would have lasted longer. And she's like, he was boring, so I left. She's like, while I was waiting in line for the roller coaster, I left. And Shinji's like, well, that wasn't very nice. And she's like, Mr. Kaji's the only real man around. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So, and then we get these three back at the wedding. And, like, the jackets have come off. And let it be known that, Ola Kagi likes her martinis. I love the lighting of this scene at the wedding, where it's like the pink and the green, like, neon lights. It's very 90s. It's so stylistic. I love it. But yeah, so we've got this whole weirdness with Ray and Shinji going on. And so then Asuka believes that Kaji is the only man around. She's not wrong. I mean, other than Gendo and Fuyu and the guy that the Dio voice actor plays, other than them, there really aren't a lot of guys around. And Shinji and Toji and Ida are boys. They're teenage boys. They're not men yet. So she's not wrong about Kaji. Not really. Right? But yeah, Asuka's, her impatience. She just told Shinji about perseverance's power, but then she stood up her date. Right? Because he was boring her. So it's kind of like, you don't practice what you preach, Asuka. Okay. So then we have the scene with Kaji, right? And we have the three of them at the bar. And she's like, I'm going to duck out to the restroom. And I love, what a smooth operator. Kaji is just the smoothest man, where he's like, don't duck out me now. Wink, wink. And she's like, he is such a player. And she like does the little, the raspberry at him. And he says she's wearing high heels. So Kaji suggests that this whole thing with Kaji is that Misato may be showing more femininity, because he makes the comment that she used to not wear high heels at all, that she's showing off more for femininity. Maybe he's saying that. He at least seems interested, right? And so he's like, how many years has it been since the three of us last drank together? And then I like that Akagi seems a little concerned. So Akagi, get Akagi in here. Akagi seems concerned for Misato. Because, yeah, Akagi is like being the wing woman. She leaves her alone with him, but she's also like, hey, is she drinking too much? She seemed kind of giddy. She's acting a little giddy. And he's like, and you drink some more to keep your high spirits in check. So he's like, you're just drinking to be able to be sociable, right? So that's what Kaji's suggesting, and that's a backhanded compliment. He's like, you're only drinking so you can talk to us. So suggesting she's a little antisocial without it. He's like, or vice versa today. And she's like, as someone who lived with her, your words carry the weight of truth. So, yeah, so Kaji, so he lived with Misato, I'm assuming 8 years ago. Because they did talk about that 8 years ago. So he did live with her. But the way he talks here, he's like, I did live with her, but that was before she started wearing heels and things. Like she wasn't, showing that side of her. It was unimaginable when we were back in school. So Misato clearly, so they all went to school together, right? Put Misato up here. So they all went to school together. And she might have been a bit of a tomboy back then. Okay? May have been more of a tomboy, like didn't wear feminine things or like heels or things like that. So, and he says, I was a brat too. So Kaji's saying that he was a brat when they were younger. Okay. So I like that. He's like, I was a brat too. And I love this shot of him looking through the glass. He's like, that wasn't really sharing a life. It was just living together, playing house. I love that. So it's like we were just playing house, not sharing a life. I love that because that's such a young love thing. That's such a young love thing. It's like if you're in a relationship when you're in your early 20s or in your teens, it's just you're living together, you're in the same house, you're playing house, you're living together. It's kind of like what Asuka and Shinji are doing right now. They're living together, they're sharing a space, but they're not sharing a life. They're not in a real relationship, right? It's just, and Kaji's suggesting that what we had when we lived together back then was just us sharing a space, and maybe there was a physicality to it, maybe there was a physical element to it, but it wasn't a full-blown relationship like when you really share a life with someone and you share your secrets and your concerns and your goals and your passions with them. Like sharing that life you have with them is not the same as being roommates with someone. I love that. I love that he's like, yeah, what we had was not a full-blown mature relationship. It was just a fling, a tryst. We were just telling ourselves that it was, but it really wasn't. I love, he's like, reality isn't that easy. Yeah, sharing a life with someone is not easy. Relationships are hard and they require sacrifice and compromise. He's like, and it's not easy. When you're younger, you kind of don't realize that. And so I like that Akagi, the whole time he's talking, she just kind of is looking forlorningly out the window. And he says, oh, I got you a cat souvenir. And she's like, oh, you're very thorough. So, only with the ladies. When it comes to work, I'm sloppy. What a liar. So, Kaji says that with work, I am sloppy. But with women, I am thorough. Which is funny because Akagi, when they were waiting on Kaji earlier, Akagi was suggesting the opposite. He's like, oh, he's always on time and punctual to work. And Misato's like, he's just always late and blah, blah. Yeah, that doesn't seem to be it, right? But he gives Akagi a souvenir. Doesn't give Misato one. She's like, I somehow doubt that. What about for Misato? And he's like, I lost once before. I make a point of not fighting when I can't win that battle. So, interesting. I think that what he gave Akagi is a surveillance device. He gave her a cat souvenir. And he makes the excuse that he didn't get Misato one because he's like, well, she wouldn't like it if I got it for her. I'm like, bullshit. You would have totally given it to her, just even as a joke. But no, I think it's got some surveillance. Yeah, there's the cat charm, right? I think you have a chance at victory. Yeah, so Kagi's like, no. She's like, you're selling yourself short. I think that you and Misato will get along just fine. And he's like, what about you? And she's like, I make a point of not talking about myself because it's no fun. So Akagi, I'm wondering if that cat souvenir is surveillance. That's just another way that Kaji's spying on her because he's trying to get closer to Nerve. Oh no. But Akagi also says that she is no fun. She's not worth being around, which is sad. It's kind of sad. But yeah, I love at this point where he's like, Katsurugi's taking a long time. Maybe she's fixing her makeup. And yeah, so at this point, I love the setup of this scene because you have all the lights and everything like around them, but there's this distance between them, right? There's this whole series has been all about putting distance between characters and showing that they are not close. And so you had these three characters close together. Misato removed herself to go to the bathroom, and during this very tense conversation that is not meant to be tense, you have this clear physical gap between Kaji and Akagi. There is a clear physical gap there, and it's amazing. What were you doing in Kyoto? And he's like, oh, that's from Matsushiro. The souvenir is not from Kyoto. And she's like, I know. She's like, it's no use playing dumb. Oh, your fingers will get burned if you get involved in this too deeply. So she knows. She knows that Kaji is a spy. She's trying to warn him, like, you're getting in too deep. You need to get out now before it gets too much. That's the advice of a friend. She's like, as a friend, leave. She's like, I'm telling you now because we're friends and we go way back. We knew each other from school. Get out now. Don't stay. And he's like, I'll take it seriously, but if I have to get burned, I'd rather be burned while playing with fire along with you. You just be the smoothest talker, Kaji. Just the smoothest damn talker. So he wants to be burned with Misato and Akagi. He's like, if I'm going down with the ship, I'm going down on the same ship that you all are on. He's like, nah. It's like, I'd rather play along with you all. And she's like, shall I go buy you some fireworks? He's like, oh, welcome back. She doesn't even know. You haven't changed, have you, you player? He's like, of course I have changed. To live is to change. I love this. This whole episode has been talking about how people change and are different over time, how time changes people. So I love Kaji saying to live is to change. Like, we're not the same people we were before. Like, he's like, I've grown up, I've matured, I know that things are different now. Yeah. And at that point, I see that we've got, like, are there cigarettes? Yeah. Akagi has cigarettes in her bag, and she puts the pen in there, and she's like, homeostasis and transstasis. She's like, what are those? One is a force for the status quo, and the other is a force for change. So Akagi talks about these two forces. One for the status quo, and one for change. These two opposing forces. And she says that a living thing is something that has both of these conflicting qualities. Like men, and Kaji's like men and women. So it's like these things, there's these two forces that want things to stay the same and that constantly change, and they're embedded within all of people, right? And Misato's like, y'all are getting too deep over here. And she's like, oh, I got work to do, bye. And Kaji's like, And she's like, really? He's like, oh, sorry to hear it. Later. So, it's such a thing, right? And then she leans over to him. She leans over to Kaji. So yeah, that's such a thing because in that moment, it's like both Akagi and Kaji want to leave Misato out of it because I'm sure they both know, like, Akagi's whole thing is that she can be impartial because she has that scientist-like mentality. She can leave the emotions on the table, and like she tells Kaji, she's like, get out. I'm telling you this as a friend. Leave right now before you get in too deep. And Kaji's like, I can't do that. And so, but they both know, they both want to leave Misato out of it because they know how emotional Misato is. Interesting, right? And I feel like in this moment that if we're going to go back on our trios and talk about them, Akagi is a lot like Rei in being like that somewhat removed, and Kaji is a lot like Asuka in being like they put on this front. Kaji and Asuka both put on this front of being a certain way, like being a player or being the popular girl. But in reality, they are a lot deeper than that. And Kaji is much more of a concerned person than he lets on, and he is much more serious than he lets on. And Asuka is much more concerned and caring than she wants to let on. So that's pretty cool. And then you have Shinji and Misato, who we've seen have all the similarities between each other, especially in regards to their father, to how they view people. So in this episode, the pairings, there's a lot of similarities between them, which is very, very interesting, right? And so I'm drinking, and so then we see Misato leaving the voicemail. Hey Shin, it's me. I'm drinking with Kaji. We're on the third after party. There's 3 after parties. Another 3. There's so many 3s in this episode. The 3rd after party. Oh my God. Okay. And he's like, okay, later. And so you see he has the soy sauce out. He has like all the plates that him and Asuka shared. Yep. And Pin. With this like coral polo. She's like, what's Misato? She's like, yeah, she'll be up late, so don't wait up on her. And then so Asuka says, oh, don't tell me she's coming back in the morning. And Shinji, bless his bones, Shinji's like, oh, no, she's with Mr. Kaji. He doesn't get it. And Asuka's like, dude, that's why she'd be coming back. That's why she'd come back in the morning. Are you stupid? Like, and so I was surprised because, okay, when the train goes by, I thought, seeing this first, I thought, you guys are going to think I'm crazy, I thought that Kaji and Misato were, like, having sex in this alleyway, is what I thought was happening. I thought they were having sex in the alleyway, and, like, he was with her, and I was like, really, we're going there? But no, she's throwing up. She's throwing up outside the train station. Thank God. Thank God, right? She's throwing up. It's fine. We're all good. I just got really concerned there for a second. But yeah, so he basically he's helping her and then carries her. And he's like, you shouldn't be throwing up at your age. And she's like, I'm sorry, I'm that age. God, I love this. Where he's like, I guess we're both that age. She's like, damn right, you're wearing heels now after all. So he's like, you've matured. You're not like a kid anymore. So it's not just that she's showing her feminine side. He's like, you're matured. You're an adult. You're wearing heels and stuff. He's like, you're not the kid I knew. He's like, time's flown by. And then I love that it's the littlest things. Like, it's just the littlest, like, sensual things in this episode that I'm like, But when she's like, she takes her arm and she's like, you should rub that stubble off. Like, that's, girl. He's like, yes, ma'am. And then we have the moth to a flame. And she's like, I'll walk the rest of the way. God, from here on in, the episode's amazing. This episode's just, it's my jam. Like, from here on in, I'm like, yes, please. So they're walking together side by side now and having this, and she's like, Kaji, do you think I've changed? And he's like, well, you've become more beautiful. Like, shut up, Kaji. Right? And she says, I'm sorry that I insisted on breaking up with you. So Misato gives us some stuff here that she broke up with Kaji. Not the other way around, right? So that makes the scene with her in the elevator with him all the more interesting when she was kissing him back, because he's like, well, you broke up with me, but you're okay with this? Like, that adds a little bit more context to it too, right? And so she said, when I said I fell in love with somebody else, that was a lie. Did you know? And he says, no. So she lied and said she loved someone else. And he didn't know. He He didn't know she was lying. And so, of course, she looks like she feels bad. She's like, it's just that I realized you were like my father. And Kaji's like, oh, we're going this way with this conversation. And he's like, And I'm assuming he knows who her father is, so he's probably like, oh, interesting. So she was saying that Kaji was like her father. We're going to get into that psychological well. That's where we're going. And he doesn't answer. She's like, that I wanted a man like my father. And she says, when I realized that, I was afraid. I was desperately afraid. And Kaji's like, oh my God. He's like, here we go. And so she was afraid of wanting someone like a man she claimed to hate. Because, yeah, at that point, she's like, I was afraid. She's like, why do I want somebody that's like my dad? She's like, it doesn't make sense. She's like, of being with you, Kaji. She's like, I didn't want to hate you. And she's like, I was afraid of being with you. I was afraid of being a woman. You know, just like, I was afraid of everything. Like, of all the implications. She's like, I hated my father, but I fell in love with someone just like him. I mean, yeah, that's, because then it implies if you love someone just like your father, but you say that you hate your father, it's like, do you really hate your father? What do you do with that? What do you do with those emotions? Like, what does that say? I mean, if you fall in love with him and he's like your dad, are you going to end up hating him too after time? Do you want to hate him? So there's like all those conflicting emotions. Like, it's just, God, it makes so much more sense. She's like, I chose nerve intending to make a clean break, but even that was an organization my dad belonged to. So she tried to run away. But it was a mistake. Which makes all the more sense of why she tells Shinji not to run away. She's like, Shinji, you can't run away from your dad. She's like, it's just not going to work out. You need to just confront it head on. She's like, I tried to run away, and I ended up working at an organization that he was part of, and I'm sure that, you know, wasn't just subliminal. It all came back around. She's like, I couldn't escape him. I just kept trying to tell myself that I was escaping him, but it wasn't the right thing to do, right? In the end, I've been fooling myself by taking revenge against the angels. She's like, everything I've been doing has just been a lie. She's like, it's just been to convince myself. Oh, I love this scene. It's so good. And he's like, no, that was your decision. Like, you made these choices. It's no one else's, you know, it's not, you can't really say that it's anybody else but you. You made this decision. You don't have to apologize to me. And she's like, it wasn't a decision. I was running away from the snare of my father. That line, I'm just like Shinji. Yeah, and she says that she's just like Shinji. That she's afraid. It's why she connects so much to him, because she sees so much of herself in him, and she doesn't want him to end up the same way. I'm a coward. I'm really sorry telling you all this now because I drank too much. And I love that you see like her feet, like everything, her feet are so dirty from like walking on the ground and everything. And I love that Kaji's like, that's enough. Like, she's like, I'm a child. I have no right to tell Shinji anything. And he's like, that's enough. Because no, that's not true. She needs to tell Shinji these things because she can speak from experience, right? And if she sees herself in Shinji, she can try to help Shinji to where he doesn't make the same mistakes that she did, right? And I'm an underhanded woman that just clings to men when it suits me. I don't think that's true at all. No. I think she's just getting a hard on to herself. Even back then, I may have just been using you. I hate myself. And he's like, that's enough. Stop it. And I'm like, shut her up with a kiss, dude. Just kiss her, you bloody fool. Yeah. Because it's like, girl, you have no right to hate yourself. Nope. I love it. I love that she drops the shoes. I love that we have that imagery. We have the imagery of him kissing her and holding her and her dropping the shoes. And she goes like to reach for him, like to pull him away or to push him away. And then she just lets the hands fall. Yep, she just accepts the kiss. And that ties back to the title those women longed for the touch of others' lips and invited their kisses. Like, she just wants something, like some kind of connection again. And Kaji's like, I'll give it to you. So Kaji is clearly still in love with her. Okay. So I do think that Kaji is in love with Misato. Okay. And she may still be in love with him. Isn't that sweet? Isn't that great? And so then we cut to back to Asuka, speak of the devil, Asuka and Shinji. And she's just like, Shinji, do you want to kiss? And so it's the same. And Shinji's like, wait, what? What did you say? I'm listening to my stuff. So yeah. So in a mirror, again, we mirrored this back in episode 9, right? In episode 9, we had like Misato and Kaji making out in the elevator, and we mirrored that with Shinji trying to muster up the courage to kiss Asuka, and he couldn't do it. And here we see again, back to back, 2 scenes. One with Kaji and Misato, but this time with Misato like luring Kaji in and Kaji wanting that affection and getting it from her. And here we see Asuka doing the same thing. But again, Asuka, it's like we've got a square here. You have Shinji and Kaji, and you have Asuka and Misato, and they're all different and similar in different ways, right? And she's like, you've never been kissed, right? And he's like, no, I've not been kissed. And she's like, well, then let's do it. And he's like, why? I love that Shinji's like, oh, why would you want to? And she's like, because I'm bored. He's like, well, because you're bored, that's not a reason. He's like, you don't want to kiss a girl? And so then Asuka says, you don't want to kiss a girl on the anniversary of your mom's death? Is that it? Are you afraid she's watching you from heaven? And Shinji's like, no, not really. Don't make fun of my mom. I'm like, Asuka's a little mean in this moment. I'm like, girl, you didn't have to bring the dead mom into this. You really didn't. You didn't have to bring the dead mom into this. You could have left her out. But she brings her up, and Shinji's like, no. And she's like, are you scared? And he's like, I'm not scared of a little kiss. And she's like, you brushed your teeth, didn't you? I love that if he hadn't brushed his teeth, she probably wouldn't have kissed him. He's like, yep. She's like, then here I go. But she even hesitates. And then Shinji has the blush, and he closes his eyes, and she's like, it's going to tickle if you breathe, so don't do it. And she holds his nose and kisses him. And holds that kiss for quite a while. And you think Shinji's blushing and getting red in the face from the kiss, but it's actually because he can't breathe. He cannot breathe. And Pin's like, what's going on? And they hold that kiss for quite some time. And I like that Shinji, he holds it. He's like, I can do this. And then you see Pin going to sleep, just ignoring them. And then he, starts to turn green because he's like, I can't breathe. And then he lets her go, and she's like, oh my God. Cool. And then she gets embarrassed and goes to the bathroom. Mm-hmm. And gargles her mouth out with mouthwash. And he's like, wow. She's like, definitely it's not something to do to kill time. So the question is if she really liked it and she was too embarrassed to stay and she was like, never doing that again, or if she actually did not like it. Because neither of them had ever been kissed, and this was their first kiss, and it's like, So again, that ties to the whole, on the other side of the board there, it ties to the idea of playing house and not sharing a life. It's that same kind of connection that Misato and Kaji, way back when they were younger, they weren't in a literal relationship with one another. They were just killing time, right? And we go through the same thing with Shinji and Asuka, where Asuka's like, that was a bad idea, shouldn't have done that. It's not a relationship. So I am glad that the reaction to the kiss was this, because these are 14-year-olds, right? I don't feel like they're emotionally mature enough to get the gravity of a relationship like that. And so it is just, they're just playing house at this point, and Shinji's like, well, shit. And in Misato and Kaji's case, it's a little bit different. And then we see him saying, oh, all right, here we are, hang on. And him helping her up. And I love that Shinji's like, Mr. Kaji! Doesn't notice that she's like, I love that Asuka pushes past him and he's like, oh God. Poor Shinji. And she's like, oh, Mr. Kaji. And then her poor room, they just lay her, lay the woman on her side. They lay her on her stomach. If the girl's drunk, lay her on her side so she doesn't vomit and drown in her own vomit. But they throw her jacket down. Her room is a mess, and there's Kaji standing there helping her lay down. Uh-huh. Yeah, and he shuts the door on her. Mm-hmm. He's like, well, I'll be leaving. And I love that she's like, oh, don't you want to stay? And Kaji's like, no, I'm not showing up with the walk of shame with these clothes on. Nope. Didn't even get anything out of it. No way. And she's like, oh, it'll be fine. And she just wanted him to stay to keep company. And he's like, oh, later, no. And she lets go when she says he smelled of lavender. So poor Asuka, that's just another thing that she knows. That she knows Kaji was with Misato. And not necessarily that she's jealous, but she is a 14-year-old girl who has this crush on this older guy, Kaji. But just the knowledge that, again, it's that she's not in the adult league, right? Misato had that conversation with her earlier today that she couldn't have the perfume because she wasn't an adult. She wasn't, part of that world. And now smelling it on him, even though she doesn't know the context, it just reaffirms that idea that she is not in the same realm as these adults. She's still a child. And I'm sure it frustrates her, right? She's like, And then Kaji's like, please take care of Katsuragi. And they're like, sure. And he wishes them good night. Uh-huh. And of course she's mad. And he's like, what's wrong? You look down. And she says, it's because I kissed you. And then he's like, oh, well, shit, thanks. He's like, thanks, I guess. Poor Shinji. That's not really what it was, but poor Shinji doesn't know any different. The poor boy's not going to want to kiss a girl ever again. Aw. And so then they do roll, and Ayanami is gone, absent again. So she's not there. She was there, we don't know about the day before, but she at least was there 2 days prior, but she's been gone again. But we don't have to wonder where she is, right? We don't have to wonder where she is because they're about to tell us. So we go to this deep underground facility in the central area. So we have Nerve headquarters. Okay, Nerve HQ. And we have this deep underground facility in the central area. So in the very center of Nerve, right? We have that. This body, like, this stuff that looks like a body, looks like a spine, going down into this tube, looks like the spine, and at the end of the tube is Ray. Okay. And then in this subzone, there's a little thing that says subzone. Okay. There is what looks like, so it looks like the stuff from a brain, right? It looks like the pipework of a brain. And it looks like the spinal column, right? Coming down out of this brain. So it looks like the spinal column. And at the spinal column, at the base of it, is this tube that has Ray in it. Now, the question is this at the center of Nerve? Why is Ray at the center of Nerve? Why is she in this test tube? What's going on? There's that. Is this inside, like, is it like functioning like an Eva? What's the deal? I don't understand. I'm going to find out, I know, and then you have Gendo. And again, all this is in orange, the color orange. Warning signs are flashing, right? The color orange is there. And she looks in the tube and she smiles at him. And then Gendo smiles, which is the creepiest thing I've ever seen. It's creepy. I don't like it. Nope. Don't like it at all. Not having it. But Gendo and Ray smiling at each other is super creepy. Because Ray, when she was talking to Shinji, didn't want to acknowledge that she was smiling at Gendo. She was like, I don't know what you're talking about. I don't know. So there's two Rays. There's two sides of Ray. There's the side of Ray that is not adept at living, that's on medication, that is socially inept, that is super quiet, that doesn't seem to like have any connection with anybody or know how to answer questions and blindly follows whatever, like a freaking blank slate. And then there's this version of Rei that is happy around Gendo, that's smiling with him, that's speaking poetry. What? It's just, and Gendo smiling again. It's super creepy. I don't like it. And it's just, it looks like a brain. It looks like this whole thing, the whole thing up here is shaped like a brain, like the center of nerve. And it's coming down to a point to like where the nape would be. This tube that looks like an entry plug is at where the nape would be, where they get injected into the body. And Rei's at the center of it. Why? Oh man, okay. And so meanwhile, 2,008 meters underground, okay? So we have over here, 2,008 meters underground. So very, very, very deep down, several layers at terminal dogma. Okay. So not central dogma, but terminal dogma. So way down in the bottom of the nerve. So it says plant C, it says LCL. Okay, so there is, I wanted to read what this says here. It says keep out. It says main LCL plant, circulation line number 3. I thought I saw 3 too. Line number 3. Oh my God. Gah! The number 3 shows up again. LCL plant, circulation line number 3. Trespassers will be shot on sight. Violators will be liable for penalties of up to 10 years imprisonment, $100,000 fine, or both. So, not supposed to be here, but at the main LCL plant, Kaji has access. And it says it says SCL3, system locked, waiting for permission key. Oh my God. Oh my God. Yep. So, at this terminal, Kaji has access. Kaji has access to it. Okay. But I'm also like, they have a trespasser sign saying that trespassers will be shot on sight, but violators are subject to 10 years in prison and $100,000 in fines. How does that work? Because this is 2,000 feet underground. Who's trespassing? Who got to this point as a trespasser? How did that even work? And how do they know the difference between the trespasser and the violator? There's like it's interesting. But he goes to do it and then has the gun to his head. And it's Misato. And he's like, oh, hey, how's your hangover? Ah! And she is just like, I'm finally sober now, thanks. He's like, I'm glad to hear it. She says, is this your day job or your side job? So Misato asking, are you doing this on behalf of Nerve or the other company you're working for? What's going on? And him saying to her, I wonder which. Ooh, he's like, he's not telling her. So she tells him that he is Kaji, Ryoji Kaji, who is the special duty organization of Nerve's Special Inspection Department. What a title. So the Special Duty Organization Nerve's Special Inspection Department, like what a title. Or also Ryoji Kaji of the Investigation Department of the Japanese Ministry of Home Affairs. Oh! So he's also of the investigation, so he's a detective. He's the Investigation Department of the Japanese Ministry of Home Affairs. So he's working for the government. So, okay. I love it. He's like, so you know all about it. And she's like, don't underestimate Nerve. He's like, is this an order from Commander Ikari? And she's like, no, it's from me. If you keep doing this other job, you'll die. He's like, Commander Ikari is using me. I can still keep going. So it's like Kaji knows. Kaji knows he's a dead man. He's like, I'm a dead man walking. I know I'm in too deep. I know that there's no way of me getting out now. So he's like, I gotta see it through. He's like, I'm in too far. I know I'm not getting out, but Ikari's still using me. I can still keep going. He's like, I can't stop now, and they're letting me keep going, so I'm just gonna keep doing it. Oh my God. I will apologize for hiding it from you. He's like, I'll call it even in thanks for yesterday. She's like, thanks. But the commander and Ri-chan are hiding things from you too. So yeah, he's trying to be like, he's like Akagi. He's like Ri-chan and Ikari are hiding info from Misato. He's like, girl, he's like, I'm glad that we're on the same page now. I'm sorry I kept all this from you, but your besties, the commander and Akagi, they're hiding stuff from you too that you probably should know about. And I love that he takes the opportunity and swipes the card and says, enter and lock again immediately. He's like, this is it. And I love that she's like, what the fudge? As we all are. So when I first saw the hands that were crucified there with the big bolts and there's blood coming out of it, you know, like you do. When I first saw the hand stuff, I thought it was Gendo's glove. It looked like Gendo's glove. It's very weird. But so yeah, so this Adam. So Adam. Okay. So Adam, it has red blood. Okay. It has red blood, and in the specimen sample that they first brought there, it had red blood too. And there's these, that's the Lance of Longinus. Oh, the Lance of Longinus is holding it down. Oh, that's where Ray went with, she went to that thing? She's seen that thing? What? But it has, and she says an Eva, no. So that's funny too. Misato calls Adam an Eva. She calls Adam an Eva, which is bizarre, right? She says no. And then she goes back to that thing, yeah. Back to the creature that was in the flashback from episode 12, right? She's like, that's impossible. And he says, yes. So that thing is what was the angel from back at the second impact. He says, this is the origin and linchpin of everything since the second impact. Can we talk about this thing? It's got a bunch of bodies coming out the bottom of it. It's got a bunch of pair of legs coming out the bottom of it. It doesn't look like it's fully formed. It's got bodies. Like, have they been sacrificed to it? Have they been offered to it? The fudge? Because, okay, the Adam specimen that was in the little tube thing had legs. The Adam specimen had arm, legs, and a tail. This thing has, like, arms and a head and a torso, but then its torso becomes, like, it just becomes bodies hanging off of it. What? And there's orange blood coming down it. Orange blood. Or some kind of fluid, something excreting it. Saying, this is Adam. The first angel is here. So, they call it the first angel. So, Adam is the first angel. Is the second Eva? Are the Evangelions based off the second angel and the first angel? Seems to be. Are they like the children of the angels? Is that how this works? Are they like children of angels? But if that, so did they take the specimen that Kaji gave them and it's transformed into this? It transformed from this little hatchling egg into this, and it keeps on transforming and evolving? Or has this Adam been in there all the time? But they called the Adam specimen the first human. They called it the first human, though. So, are they saying that the humans are made from angels? Are they saying that the Evas are made from angels? Yeah, that thing is freaky as hell. And the two of them sitting there watching it. And then it has those eyes. So it looks like the plate on its face has like craters and stuff in it. And again, very Soul Eater vibes. I feel like Soul Eater was inspired from this thing of Adam, because it's literally, it's a face and there's a triangle, 3 sides, and there's 7 eyes. There's 3 on one side and 4 on the other. I don't like the fact that it has uneven eyes. It's kind of creepy. I don't like that. Oh. You're right. Nerve is deeper in this than I thought. Ooh, and then it ends. It ends there. Oh my God. What? I've talked for an hour and a half. Oh my God. There's so many questions. So many questions about what the hell Adam is. So now Misato knows that Kaji is a spy working for the Ministry of Home Affairs from the Japan government, that he's there trying to get information about Nerve and trying to sort things out. So this creepy angel, the first angel Adam, is there and has been like speared down. Like, why it has the lance in it, what the point of the lance is, I don't know. Why did Rei put the lance into it? I don't know. I'm not sure. But there's that. And then, meanwhile, Shinji and Asuka have no clue what's going on. Rei is somehow tied to all this, but Rei seems to not understand what's going on, and yet she's at the base of it all. So, what's the deal with Rei? What's going on? Is she being brainwashed, like, and her mind erased every time she's being used by Gendo? And then, I'm really nervous for Kaji and Misato. I am, because not only does Akagi know that Kaji's up to something, but Gendo and Fuyu know, and they seem like they know Kaji is expendable, but they're gonna keep using him for now. And I'm like, I don't like that. I was like, I get bad vibes for Kaji. I get very bad vibes from Misato. I'm like, are they using our girl? What's gonna happen? Not having it. And just stuff is about to go down. And we just got like the first, like the pieces are starting to come together, but it's like the more information we get, the more questions there are, and there's not answers, there's just more questions. So please, do not spoil me. I don't want any hints. I don't want any clues. I don't want my theories to be affirmed or deconfirmed. I just want to figure this out as we go. But that being said, what a crazy episode. So, don't tell me, some people like back in when episode 13 were coming out, they're like, just wait till episodes 15 and 16. And I'm like, please don't hype me up. Don't give me anything. Don't do that. I knew that after episode 14, I was like, I figured episode 15 would be crazy, but I don't want to know anything about episode 16. I'll probably wait a little bit until after episode 14 comes out on Patreon before I watch it. But I don't want to know. So please don't spoil me. And I just want to be surprised, because this episode came out of nowhere and slapped me in the face. So I'm happy for that, but I'm very excited to see what's going to happen and see where we go to from here. So with that being said, I hope you all have a wonderful week. Please stay safe, take care, and yeah, I'll be back very soon with episode 16 of Neon Genesis Evangelion. Bye.